Welcome to episode 29 in our series on duties of the heart, and we're still in the gates of serving God, and we're going to now go through Chapter 8, and this deals with the concept of free will and responsibility for one's actions. The question in this particular episode is how much free will do you actually have? As a servant of God, we assume new responsibilities. Does that mean that our freedom of will is taken away from us? Perhaps it is. Perhaps a segment of our freedom has now been just take the word servant, when you can assume that when you're a servant of somebody, some freedoms have been taken away. But this is a kind of acceptable. You accept it. If you're a servant, you accept that you're not completely free anymore, but you're a servant of God, and that gives you far more. You gained more than you've lost. So let's begin. So again, this is composed as a dialogue between the soul and the mind, and let's begin. So the soul says to the mind, "You have taken up my treatment and brought me relief. You have reproved me, acted generously, and with your light supervised my treatment and dispelled the darkness of folly that has enveloped me. Still, one problem remains, and it is detrimental to the service of God. If you can cure me of its ills and relieve me of its distress, I will be saved from the worst of all diseases and will be close to recovery from all my maladies." The mind. What is it that troubles you, as you say? The soul. I have found in scriptures on the subject of compulsion and predetermination, control and will, that all these are God's in respect to all that He has created, whether mineral or vegetable, animal or rational, as it is written in, and he quotes Psalms 135, whatever God willed, He did, in heaven and on earth. And also from Shmuel, chapter 1, verses 6 to 7. God puts to death and brings to life. He casts down into the grave and raises up. God makes poor and makes rich. He brings low, He also exalts. And also from Eicha, chapter 3, verse 37. Who has spoken, and it came to pass, unless God has commanded it? Is it not from the mouth of the Most High that good and evil come? And also further, he quotes from Yeshayahu, chapter 45, verse 7. I form light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. And he concludes his quotes from Tehillim 127. Unless God builds the house, its builders toil in vain on it. Unless God watches over the city, the watchmen stay on alert in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and stay up late, you who eat the bread of anxious toil, for He grants sleep to His beloved. And there are many other similar verses. All of these indicate that man and all other living things were prepared by the Creator for the adornment of this world. If He moves them, they are moved with His permission, power and ability. If He brings them to rest, they cease their activity, as it is written. And he quotes from Tehillim, Eov 34:29. When He gives quietness, who will disturb Him? And also from Psalms 104, hide your face, they are paralyzed. Take away their breath, they die and turn again into dust. All the sayings of the early ones in every book agree on this without dissent. On the other hand, we find in Scripture a contrary view, which would indicate that a human being's actions are entrusted to him. He chooses them as He pleases. They spring from His will and free choice. Accordingly, he is subject to reward and punishment for obedience and for transgression, respectively. As it says in Deuteronomy 30:15, "See, I set before you this day life and good, death and evil." And he continues to say, choose life. Also quotes from Malachi, chapter 1, verse 9, this is your own doing. Also from Job 34:11, for according to a man's acts, he pays him. And also from Proverbs 19, verse 3, a man's folly warps his way. All that is in our literature on the Torah, the commandments and proper conduct confirms this. Also what is mentioned in it regarding reward for obedience and punishment for transgression, all this indicates that a man's actions are entrusted to him, and that the divine glory is free from responsibility for his good or for his evil, for his righteous or corrupt actions. The matter for me is hard to grasp. It is exceedingly difficult to reconcile these two views. If there is a remedy for this ill, may God cure me of it through you. This is spoken by the soul. The mind. The difficulty you mention of reconciling these two conceptions found in scriptures is no greater than that of reconciling the contradiction one finds upon reflection in life's actual experiences. For we see that a person's actions are sometimes in accordance with his plan and his will, while at other times they are against his will and intention. These disparities show you that the Creator, may he be exalted, has control over a person, and that the latter is bound by the Almighty, who permits him to do only what he wishes and prevents him from doing what he does not wish. You can also see this in the movement of a person's tongue, in his hearing and sight. And yet, on the other hand, I see that reward and punishment are meted out to him according to his deeds and his movements, either in serving God or rebelling against him. Controversies have long raged among the learned on how to reconcile compulsion or predetermination with divine justice, which is man's free will and responsibility. Some say that all human actions proceed according to man's free will, ability and power, that God has entrusted these matters to him and given him control over. The divine glory is free from responsibility for them, and as a result, man is subject to reward and punishment for them. Others attribute human actions, like everything else, to the Creator, may he be exalted. They say that every movement that takes place in the world, from that of a rational being to that of an inorganic body, is with the permission of the Creator, may he be exalted, is determined and decreed by him, and is under his control. Nothing deviates from it, not even by a hair's breadth, neither more nor less. When the proponents of this position were challenged in regard to reward and punishment, they replied, "We have no knowledge of the form of reward and punishment or of the processes of its laws. God, however, is righteous and will do no injustice. He is faithful in his promise of reward and punishment and will not break it. Our minds are too feeble to grasp the powerful nature of his wisdom. His righteousness is too obvious and his kindness is too evident for us to suspect his judgments. There is no God beside him." Others see fit to subscribe to both positions, compulsion and divine justice. They say that whoever delves deeply into them will inevitably err and falter, no matter how he interprets them. In their opinion, the correct approach is as follows. We should act as would act one who believes that a man's actions are left to his free will, and that he will be rewarded and punished for them. Hence, we should make every effort in all that will be of help to us before the Creator in both worlds. At the same time, we should trust in God with the trust of one who is certain that all actions and movements, benefit and harm, are predetermined by God, under his authority and by his sentence, that God, may he be exalted, has a conclusive claim against man, while man has no claim against God, may he be exalted. And Rabbi Bachya continues in the next section with the fact that there is some goods to our ignorance in this discussion over free will and predeterminism. So he continues, of all the views that we have mentioned, this is the nearest one to salvation. For it is true and proper that we admit our ignorance in this facet of the Creator's wisdom, owing to the weakness of our minds and limitation of our comprehension. There is some good to our ignorance in this matter. For this reason it was hidden from us. If there were any advantage to us in understanding this mystery, the Creator would reveal it to us. A close analogy to this can be observed from the condition of a person with weak eyesight, who cannot enjoy the light of the sun unless he puts a thin screen between the light and his eyes. The more his eyes are impaired, the thicker the screen he needs. The less they are impaired, the thinner the screen he needs. And now Rabbi Bachya is going to consider various hidden and mysterious ways of God. So he continues. Furthermore, we observe in many material devices functions regarding which we had not seen them with our own eyes, but only heard of them by report. We would quickly declare the one who told us about them a liar. Take, for instance, an astrolabe. This was a measuring device formerly used by astronomers. If we had never seen this instrument with our eyes, but someone had told us of its form and appearance, and what can be apprehended through it of the movement of the spheres, the position of the stars, and the precise determination of each of the seasons, the distances between disparate things, and many other facts that would otherwise be unknown to us, we would have no clear conception of it, nor could we form a picture of it in our minds. The same is true of something more familiar to us, which is in common use, the balance, or I believe this means a scale. For if we had not perceived it with our sense of sight, we would not have thought it conceivable that one could weigh truly with a balance in which one part is longer than the other. And what is still more surprising is that on this balance, and by means of a single stone, many objects varying in weight can be weighed, some of these weighing more, others weighing less than the single stone. What is even more commonly used is the upper millstone, which the water, by a slight device, causes to revolve regularly. When we cast a small stone into a swift current of flowing water, it does not stay on the surface for a single moment, but sinks to the bottom, whilst the millstone is many times heavier than the stone, and the force of the water by which the mill is set in motion is much less than that of the currents. If anyone had told us this, and we had not seen it with our own eyes, we would have quickly denied and repudiated his story. All this is because we know so little of the secrets of creation, and because of our limited understanding of the foundation of the created things, their effects, nature, and particular qualities. Now, if we are ignorant or ordinary, accessible things, it is not surprising that we do not understand the workings of predetermination and justice in the exalted Creator's judgments, these being infinitely more hidden and sublime than the things that we mentioned just now. In a similar vein, King David said, and I quote from Psalms 131, God, my heart is not haughty, my eyes are not raised high, I do not occupy myself with things too great and mysterious for me. He followed this with a related statement on submission to God also from Psalms 131, surely I have stilled and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. My soul is with me like a weaned child. So that concludes the 8th chapter, and there's food for thought there regarding free will and predetermination. But in my opinion, I think that, God definitely gives us free will. He gives us free will to do good and free will to sin. But if we sin, we have to accept our punishment as part of the process. And as a servant of God, your punishment is likely to come extremely swiftly. You're not given any periods of grace anymore. If now the Shekhinah rests on you, if you sin, you're punished immediately, a hard, touch to your soul. And you learn quickly. So perhaps you still have free will, but you're less inclined to to do anything that is detrimental to yourself, whereas before perhaps you would have got away with it, now you won't get away with it. So the freedom of will is still there, but your freedom of choice is still there, but you're likely to make wiser choices. So there's fewer choices, and they're made more wisely. So perhaps there is less freedom of choice because you're making less choices, because you're following a new way. But God, at the end of the day, whatever your position in life is He will put you on the best path. In other words, yes, He will determine for you your path, but He will He'll put you on the best possible path. If you deviate from it, that's your issue, because you're just, you're taking the longer route, the worse route. But He will always push you back onto the best routes if you're worthy, whatever your status is, and it's up to you to stay on God's path, this derech hayeshua, as Rambam puts it, on the straight path. And so next episode we'll continue with these discussions about freedom of choice and predetermination in Chapter 9.